Chapter 3. Chance. Chance listened as Butch went over his expectations. As new manager of the Patriot Peak Resort, he was in charge of hiring and firing, setting schedules, employee reviews, and general delegation to the various departments. The resort was large, with over 100 rooms, an on-site event planning arm, and a spa. Plus, it offered skiing and snowboarding lessons. Though he knew he had the necessary management skills and the ability to quickly learn whatever he was lacking, the job still seemed slightly overwhelming to him. Thankfully, as Butch wanted to spend less time at the resort, he had okayed Chance hiring a personal assistant to help with everything. Butch pushed back from his large oak desk. "You ready to go meet some of the crew?" he asked as he smoothed down his button-down shirt. Even in the chill of winter, Butch didn't seem to believe in sweaters. Though this was only Chance's second day being around him, Butch wore a similar Western-style shirt to the one he'd had on yesterday and blue jeans. Chance had a hunch the rest of his wardrobe would be more of the same. Though Butch hadn't mentioned a dress code policy, Chance hoped he wouldn't be required to wear dress attire every day. He'd been forced into the same uniform every day in the military, and while he hadn't minded at the time, he now remembered how freeing it was to wear different clothes each day. He was a fan of sweaters, and he'd purchased a different one for every day of the week. It was a small luxury, but one he had become accustomed to, and one he hoped Butch would accept. With a nod, he stood and joined Butch. The idea of meeting everyone caused a knot in his stomach to form, but it had to be done. He might as well get it over with. "Ready as I'll ever be, I guess." Butch clapped a meaty hand on his shoulder. "You'll be fine. You were made for a job like this." Chance wasn't so sure about that, but when his military career had been cut unexpectedly short due to his injury, he'd had to find something. And Butch seemed to be a good guy, even if he was dating Chance's mother. As he followed Butch down to the conference room, where some of the staff would be gathered, Chance observed the decor he hadn't examined closely yet. After his interview yesterday, he had been too tired to explore the hotel and had simply retired to the room he had rented. His mother had shown him a house he liked, but she needed to get the paperwork together before he could move in. The decor was rustic, yet elegant. Tans and golds were the dominant colors, supported with dark blues, greens, and reds. Chance was no designer, but whoever had decorated the resort had done a good job. It was comfortable and neutral enough to appeal to both genders. Butch pushed open the door to a large, well-lit room. It was clear the conference room could double as an event room for weddings, parties, and the like, as large chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and tables were folded up against the wall. In the middle of the room stood a group of about 20 people, all eyes trained on his and Butch's entrance. Chance scanned the group quickly, but his heart froze when his eyes reached the last woman in the group. She had her head down, but the color of her strawberry blonde hair perfectly matched the shade that still appeared in his dreams from time to time. Could it be? Could he really be that lucky? Or perhaps unlucky, depending on how she felt? "Thank you all for coming," Butch's booming voice echoed in the large room. "I know you are all busy and that we don't have everyone here. However, I wanted as many of you as possible to meet our new on-site manager, Chance Overstreet. He comes to us with management experience, and he's served our great country for the last 8 years. I have no doubt you will come to like him as much as I do." Butch clapped Chance on the shoulder so hard this time that he almost fell forward. Thankfully, his good leg had been supporting his weight, or he might have gone sprawling on the ground in front of his new employees. That would have been a great way to make a first impression. "They're all yours," Butch whispered. "I've got a meeting with a developer for some new amenities I want to add." "Right. Thank you." As Butch left, Chance turned to face the group once again. He was used to speaking to large groups of men, but for some reason, this small group of men and women made the nerves in his stomach twist into knots. Perhaps he was afraid they would see through him and realize that while he did have management experience, it wasn't hotel management experience. Or maybe he was afraid his leg would act up and he would start limping, as often happened when he stood for too long, giving him the appearance of weakness. Or maybe it was the woman at the back. She still hadn't locked eyes with him, but in his heart he knew it had to be her. What on earth would he say to her? He took a deep breath to quell the fears and smiled out at the group. "I'm pleased to meet you all. I won't remember all your names today, but I will make it my goal to know you all by name by the end of the week. If you have the time, I'd like to hear how long you've been working for Butch, what you do here, and what you might be interested in doing." One by one, he made his way through the line, meeting the ski instructor, the event planner, a few of the wait staff, and several of the housekeeping staff. He shook their hands and listened to their stories, but with every one his eyes darted to the end of the line, to the woman who had once stolen his heart and still occupied his thoughts. Finally, he stood before her, and she looked up. Though older, she was exactly as he remembered, with a light dusting of freckles across her face and eyes the color of a winter storm. Merribeth? Even though she stood in front of him, he couldn't really believe it. The day he left her flashed through his mind. "What do you mean you're leaving?" She was trying to be brave, but the quivering of her chin and the tear that escaped out of the corner of her eye betrayed her. "I have to get out of here, away from my dad." It had only been a month since his father opened up about his affair, but the thought still rubbed him like cuts from broken glass. "But why does that mean we have to break up? Just take some time and come back to me. I'll still be here." Chance shook his head. "Don't you understand what this means? If my parents can't make it, what hope do we have? I'll probably end up just like him, and you deserve better, Merribeth. You deserve someone who can love you." Her hand fell on his arm, clamping like a vice grip. The strength of her grip surprised him. "You love me. I know you do, and you are all I need." He wanted to believe her, but he wasn't sure any longer. His entire world had just been turned upside down, and he needed time to digest it, time to figure everything out. "I'm not even sure I know what love is anymore." This time, she didn't try to stop the tears, but she did wipe them away as they crested the apple of her cheek. "You're just scared, and you're running away. The Chance Overstreet I know wouldn't run from fear. He would face it head on." Maybe I'm not that Chance anymore. Though every bone in his body screamed that he was making a mistake, Chance turned and walked away from Merribeth. The sound of her sobs echoed in his ears long after he left her. She met his gaze, and he tried to read the emotion in her eyes. "Chance, I didn't think you'd ever come back here." Though her expression didn't change, he heard the hurt and confusion in her voice, and from the corner of his eye he saw her fingers snag the fabric of her pants and twist. His lips twitched as he remembered the first time he noticed her nervous habit. It had been in English class, when they'd had to give a speech about their favorite Shakespearean character. She had picked Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and had practiced her speech for him at least a dozen times. She had it down pat, and could probably have recited it in her sleep. However, when her name was called, and she stood in front of the classroom facing their peers, her fingers had found the fabric of her jeans and twisted them tightly until her speech was over. Evidently, she hadn't outgrown that habit. He forced his lips to remain in place. No doubt she had no desire to stroll down memory lane with him. "Neither did I. So you work in the resort?" He kept his voice low because he could feel the other workers watching them. "I do. In housekeeping." "Housekeeping, huh?" He found that image hard to reconcile with his memory of Merribeth. She'd been so vivacious and bursting with ideas that the thought of her cleaning room after room monotonously, day after day, did not compute in his mind. "Do you like it?" She offered a small smile. "It's steady work and rewarding. I like making sure the guests have a clean place to stay." She hadn't exactly answered his question, but he could understand why. No doubt she also remembered the long talks they'd had under the stars. Talks where they'd shared their hopes and dreams for the future. Hopes and dreams that did not include being a maid, or a manager for that matter. "How long have you been working here?" 2 years. I was the office manager for a small firm before I took this job. Honestly, I'm willing to do whatever is needed for the resort as long as it works with my schedule. Though her demeanor appeared mild and mannered, she held his gaze with an unwavering intensity. Clearly, she was as strong as ever. "And what is your schedule?" Her eyes widened as if she'd realized what she'd said might sound demanding. "My current schedule is Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. That works well with my life right now." He wondered what that meant. Was she married? Did she have kids? She'd always talked about having kids. 4, at the minimum, so she could have 2 of each gender. He'd laughed when she said that and told her that biology didn't work that way. You couldn't just put in your demands. But she'd always shaken her head and said that God knew her heart and he was in control. Chance offered a smile to let her know he wasn't upset by her audacity. "I think we can continue to accommodate that schedule." Relief flooded her face and relaxed her shoulders. "Thank you, sir." Sir? Coming from her lips, the words felt so formal. Perhaps she didn't want anyone to know they had dated. Or maybe, like himself, she was fighting memories of the past, and calling him sir helped keep that distance. "There's no need to call me sir. Chance will do just fine." A piece of him longed to hear her say his name again, but she was not going to indulge him. Instead, she lifted her chin and stared pointedly at him. "You're my boss. Considering the circumstances, I think sir is not only fitting, but deserved. Don't you?" She was still angry at him. He should have expected it, but it jarred him nonetheless. Merribeth had always looked at him with love in her eyes. Now, he saw nothing. It was like she had built up a wall to keep her emotions hidden from him. He could understand it, but he wasn't sure he could work with it. He'd have to find a way to get her to forgive him, soon. Chance nodded to end the conversation and stepped back to address the group once more. "I look forward to working with all of you. Please know that I have an open-door policy. If you need anything, don't hesitate to come see me." Chance watched Merribeth exit the room with the rest of the staff. She kept her back straight and her head high, and as much as he wanted her to, she did not turn to look at him. With a sigh, he walked the rest of the room. Butch had given him a brief tour, but he figured he could take some time to check out what the resort had to offer. Maybe it would give him ideas on what to do about Merribeth as well. After perusing the conference room, Chance headed toward reception to meet the current clerks and observe the layout. As he turned the corner, though, he wished he hadn't chosen this moment to appear. The assertive voice of his mother carried across the room. What was she doing here? "I know he's here. He just got hired as the manager. Can't you just call him on one of those phones in front of you?" With a sigh, Chance approached. He had so much work to do, he didn't have time to entertain his mother right now, or deal with the 20 questions he knew she would pepper him with. But perhaps she had the paperwork for the house. That he could make time for, especially since the moving truck was supposed to arrive today as well. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her face brightened and her heels clopped across the floor until she reached him. "You didn't think I wouldn't come see you on your first day at work, did you?" Was it rude for him to say that's exactly what he'd thought and expected? Probably, but he was nearing 30. He certainly didn't need his mother showing up at his place of employment. "I wanted to make sure you got settled in okay. and that Butch was treating you right." Her eyes darted around the room. "He's not here, is he?" Chance sighed. "No, Mom. He said he was meeting with a developer." How good was this relationship if his mother didn't know that? She'd said they'd been dating for a few months, but his mother was prone to exaggeration. So a few in her book might be just over one. "Thanks for stopping by, though, but please tell me you didn't come here just to check up on me." Her smile widened, and she patted his chest. "Of course not. I also came to bring you this for your first day." She revealed the hand that had been hidden behind her back and held up a generic white mug with the words "World's Best Boss" stenciled in black on the side. Chance stared at the mug, slightly confused. "Thank you, but you don't work here. How do you know what kind of boss I'll be?" She rolled her eyes and placed the mug in his hand. "Because you've got good genes. Your father may not have been a great husband, but he was a good manager. Plus, I'm good at what I do." Modest, too, Chance thought, but he kept those words to himself. "I know you'll do great," his mother continued. "Besides, you can pretend a former employee gave it to you." No, he couldn't, because that would be lying, something Chance prided himself on not doing, and something he thought his mother would abhor, especially after his father had lied to them for so long. However, his mother seemed to think that white lies were perfectly acceptable. "Well, thank you." It wasn't that he would never use a mug, but having his mother give it to him just felt awkward. In fact, having her here just felt awkward. "Are you going to show me around or what?" As tempted as he was to utter "or what" and see what she did, he didn't need the headache. Although he was pretty sure Butch would have already shown her around, giving her a tour would be the fastest way to appease her and get her to leave so he could concentrate on work. Besides, he had been planning to give himself a tour anyway. "Sure, come on,"